Hi, I'm Dale Powell, and welcome to That Spirit of Christmas. Tonight, I have a very special podcast for you. I want to talk about the man who really needs no introduction, but tonight I want to give him a proper one. Oh, he's known all over the world, and there's probably not a person who doesn't know who I'm talking about. There is one beloved presence who returns to us every December. He arrives under many names: St. Nicholas, Kris Kringle, Papa Noel, Father Christmas, and in some corners of the world, he's even known as Grandfather Frost. You know, when I was a little boy back in, like 1966, listening to a radio program in Portsmouth, Ohio, on a radio station that doesn't exist anymore called WPAY. They used to be a radio station that would play letters, and we would have our letters read. That we wanted someone to bring us a certain gift. And I can remember the person who announced that said that he was sometimes known as Father Snow. But of course, we know him as what? Santa Claus. Call him what you will, the heart behind every name is the same. It's a spirit of generosity. And tonight we begin our journey into the stories behind the suit, the legends, the history, and the countless faces of the man we simply call Santa. But before we go any further, let's talk about who Santa really is. Not just the jolly figure in the red, but the long, layered history that shaped him. Santa Claus didn't just appear. He's the result of centuries of shared imagination. His story winds through the ancient Europe, early Christianity, midwinter folklore, and cultural borrowing that spans 1,000 years. Some pieces come from St. Nicholas, the generous bishop of Myra. Some come from old winter festivals, where people told stories of gift givers who talked and walked through the snow. Some come from Dutch settlers whose Sinterklaas, the way they said St. Nicholas, actually became Santa Claus. And some, the robes, the beard, the wintry seriousness, echo older figures like Father Christmas and Grandfather Frost. Every detail we recognize today, the stockings, the chimneys, the reindeer, has a history behind it. None of it is random. Santa is a mosaic. He has been put together for a long time, a legend assembled across continents and centuries. And yet, some people like to point out that certain winter traditions have roots in old pagan celebrations. Well, there is some truth to that. But let's be honest about what that really means. A tradition only carries the meaning that you give it. If you celebrate Christmas as a season of love, generosity, and renewal, then that's exactly what it is. It's not pagan at all. If someone insists that it's pagan, it probably says more about their focus than it does yours or mine. Nearly every world holiday sits on layers of older customs. Human beings have always marked winter with light, warmth, and hope. Christmas simply gathered the best pieces and gave them new meaning. So we're not here to argue over labels. We're here to follow the thread of how a beloved figure came to be and why today Santa Claus is still with us and he's still very relevant. Now, long before the red suit, long before the sleigh bells and the rooftop landings, there was a man walking through the warm sunlight streets of Myra. Doesn't sound like Christmas, does it? A port city in the Mediterranean where winters were mild, but people's needs were not mild. His name was Nicholas, and he was a Christian bishop. But he wasn't the stern, stone faced kind of old bishop or old father that you heard. No, Nicholas cared. Nicholas listened. Nicholas noticed. Nicholas acted because Nicholas loved. He was fortunate. He came from money. That part is true. But he treated his inheritance as a tool, not as a trophy. The most famous story is the one about the three daughters. Their father had fallen on hard times, and without dowries, those girls had no future. So Nicholas visited their home at night and slipped a bag of gold through the window. And again for the second daughter. And when he tried to do it the third time, the father caught him, only to hear Nicholas ask gently to be quiet about it. See, kindness wasn't meant to bring Nicholas fame. He didn't want anyone to know that he was the one giving the gifts. He wanted to do it anyway. It was meant to bring someone else hope. And isn't that what Santa Claus does today? That quiet generosity made him beloved, and over the centuries, Nicholas became a symbol for anyone who needed a friend when life grew cold. Now, his feast day, the feast for St. Nicholas, is December the 6th, and it became a time for giving small gifts to honor what Nicholas had done in his lifetime. And it was especially true for children. As Christianity spread into colder northern regions, people naturally blended Nicholas's celebration with their midwinter customs. Eventually, the giving shifted from December 6th to Christmas Eve, when families were gathering. So Nicholas wasn't pushed aside, he was brought in. And that's when St. Nicholas became a part of Christmas. The spark remained, a gift giver moving quietly through the night, and that spark crossed an ocean. Now, the Dutch brought Santa Claus to America. See, in the 1600s, Dutch settlers brought Sinterklaas to New Amsterdam, which is now New York City. American tongues reshaped the name until Sinterklaas kind of softened and began to sound like Santa Claus. But two Americans, a poet and a cartoonist, carved the modern Santa into the world's imagination. In 1823, Clement Clark Moore wrote A Visit from St. Nicholas, which we commonly call "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." He wrote it for his children, and that poem gave us Santa's sleigh. It gave us 8 tiny reindeer, not 9. Uh, that's another story, which I'll explore another time. Rudolph came a little later. The chimney visit, the stockings, the jolly, round bellied figure we instantly recognize today. Nope, he didn't invent Santa, but he certainly clarified the image. But who did? Who gave us that image? Well, that was an artist. During the Civil War, illustrator Thomas Nast drew Santa for Harper's Weekly. Over nearly 30 years, he shaped Santa's look and identity. He gave him a red suit trimmed with fur. He gave him big boots. He imagined that he had elves. He came up with the idea that he had lists of who's been naughty and who's been nice. And yeah, he's the one that came up with the North Pole Workshop right behind me. Well, before Thomas Nast, Santa had no fixed home. Santa Claus lived in Spain. Father Christmas lived in the forest and snowy woods. But in the 1860s, the North Pole was the most mysterious place on the earth, a blank spot on the map. No one had reached it yet. So in 1866, Nast drew a map labeled Santa Clausville, NP, North Pole. And just like that, Santa had a home, a magical one, a universal one, and it stuck. Now, let's talk about the Coca-Cola Santa Claus because Coca-Cola certainly has a big role to play in making our modern Santa. But they didn't invent him. In the 1930s, their artist painted a Santa as a warm, human, grandfatherly type figure, and those images became iconic worldwide. They didn't create Santa, they amplified the Santa people already loved. Now, in 1924, Santa made his first appearance at the end of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Isn't that a little ironic that Santa Claus first came to America in New York, and every Thanksgiving Day he still comes to New York, and we see him in that Macy's Day Parade? That moment told the entire country Christmas has officially begun. Crowds waited for hours to see him. Children held their breath. And when Santa appeared at the end of that parade, he wasn't just a character anymore. He was the opening ceremony of the holiday season. Now, here's something that's kind of neat, and we still do this a little bit today. Well, actually, it's kind of gone pretty high tech. In 1955, Christmas took its most surprising leap. A department store misprinted Santa's phone number in a newspaper ad, and the number rang through to the Continental Air Defense Command. Instead of hanging up, the officers played along. They checked the radar and gave children updates on Santa's location. That tradition grew into what we now know as NORAD Tracks Santa. I'll bet you many of you will track Santa every year on your computer. I know I do. Every Christmas Eve, the most sophisticated radar and satellite system on Earth turns its attention to one magical flight of one man who's going to make a lot of stops through the night. Yep, he started as a humble bishop, and he became a rooftop rider, and he's now a cultural icon, and he can be tracked through space. We call him Santa Claus, the jolly old elf, and boy, is his story rich. He knows one thing that I know. He knows that if you turn it to love, your Christmas is going to be a wonderful thing. Why don't we try to love the way that he does? Think about that. Doesn't a smile on Christmas morning from a child take away some of the sadness of the world? I wish I'd written that line, but I didn't. I took it from a Rankin Bass Christmas special. Happy Christmas, everyone. I hope you have the best holiday ever.